Hi, Jamie. So happy to have you here today after a couple of times of trying to set up this meeting. Finally, today we are successful. As I know you are a busy guy, I don't want to take too much time from you today. And I would like just to introduce you just briefly, and then later you can do that yourself. So Jamie Dixon is everything you can imagine. He is a coach, he is a trainer, he is a facilitator, and also what we are going to talk about today, he is an author. He didn't write just one book. Even one book is a big accomplishment, but Jamie wrote 3 books, and this is one of them, The Story Habit. So today we're going to talk about what I would like to hear from you, Jamie, is how can we encourage people to step into a new career choice, no matter if it's coaching or training or anything else you've done in your life. But I'm also very interested about becoming an author. Maybe some people think about they should, they can, they would, but they never get to. So I would like you to talk about that a little bit, and then we will build on that later. So for now, I'm going to give you the stage, and you can just share a couple of details. How did you transfer from any previous experience to becoming everything I just mentioned now?
Well, thank you very much for having me, and on this casual day as well, where you can see my wife walking around in the
Yeah, that's
background.
okay.
So, yeah, well, I guess how did I become an author is a good question to start, and I think it really depends on what you mean by author. Because when you say author, I'm not someone who's a full-time author. I've written some books, but my full-time income comes from all the training and coaching I do. And if anyone is trying to make a full-time living from writing books, I would advise them against it, because it doesn't really work out that way. But as a bit of background, I published my first book in 2019. And it's called Shaping Paths: How to Design and Deliver Practical Training. And that book took me 6 years to write. And I know a lot of people who have started writing books and then get distracted, lose motivation, or they strive for perfection and never ever finish their book because they spend years editing and editing and editing. I know a lot of people who have tried to write books and not really got to the final stage of the process. So how did I go from wanting to write a book to the final stage of actually publishing a book? Well, let me start with the publishing the book part first, because again, we have to get quite specific by what we mean by publishing, because you can publish through a publishing company, which I have not done. I have self-published, and overseas it's very easy to self-publish on Amazon. And in theory, it's kind of similar over here. You can write your own book and then find a printer and then print it out and then just sell to people privately or gift to people privately. It's quite simple in that way to publish. Going back to the very beginning, it started with an idea, and that idea got me some questions. And the idea was I wanted to write a book about how experience changes people. And that was my starting point. And I started doing a lot of research about all sorts of different things. As I was researching, I get lots of ideas. I then write down these ideas into massive essays. And within the long essays, there'd be little bits of gold that I'd then take out from the boring essays and then gradually build up and shape up. And basically that process took me 6 years of writing these long essays, picking out the little bits of gold, trying to package them into a framework, trying to organize them, reorganize them. And that process took me 6 years. Then it got to the stage where I have the book pretty much ready, and now I need to get it edited for publishing. And that process is that is where perfectionism becomes a real drawback, because you can want to have the best book possible, the perfect book, but if you want the perfect book, you will never ever publish a book. So I remember in 2018, I believe it was, I just said to myself, I am publishing this book in February 2019, no matter what state it's in. And I said that to myself, and then I said that to everyone else around me. And that really planted the seed. And so I felt a lot of pressure to get it done. And, when you have a lot of pressure to get something done by a timeline, you start to cut some corners that if you were in the mode of perfectionism, you wouldn't cut those corners. And so that was what got me to finally publishing my first book. It was a very long and painful and stressful journey, but I'm very, very glad I did that, because I learned a lot from it. And since then, I've gone on to publish 2 books. So that's kind of how I became an author, so to speak.
After hearing your reply, I already learned so many things. First of all, of course, becoming an author, why you do like that is because you're not a full-time author and you don't earn money only by selling your books. Let's wish for that. But I think this is a very common position for a lot of us right now, nowadays, because many people are trying to find their own different interests or passions or hobbies, and then they figure out, oh, I can't live off that, but I can have different income streams and then still have some time to do something that I really want, like publish a book. And what I also heard is you took a lot of time to convert all of these ideas into something you could finally publish. And then you said, okay, I'm doing it no matter what. So however it looks like, I'm not going to overthink it anymore, because even when you finished it, there could be some potential struggle to publish it if you let yourself sink into that perfectionism idea that everything has to be perfect. I really like that. And another thing that I want to ask is, has it become any easier after you published the first book and spent that much time and learned all these different things? How was it for the other 2 books afterwards?
Yeah, so the second book is very interesting, because I was writing my third book, this book, and I was about a year into the process of writing it. And in that first year, I was doing lots and lots of research. And again, I set myself a cutoff date. At the end of 2020, I will have finished all of my research, and I'm not doing any more research. And so it got to the end of 2020, and I told my friend Yuri, a Dutch guy who lives in Singapore, I finally finished the research for this book, and I think I can publish it faster than my first book. My first book took me 6 years. I reckon this one can take me maybe 2, maybe 3 years. And he said, why don't you write a book about the experience you've gained in writing faster and faster? And I said, okay, how about I do this? I'll write a book in 24 hours. And so in February 2021, I locked myself away in I think it was the Park Hotel in People's Square for 2 days. And I spent a total, actually a total of 15 hours. So not long, actually, writing a book about productivity. And the book is called Overcome and Get It Done. I think it's 24 principles that allowed me to write this book in 24 hours. And I basically took some really big lessons from my first book and applied them quite intensely. And so one thing I did in that second book that, one thing I didn't do in that second book that I did in that first book was I didn't research and create a framework. I had a lot of ideas about productivity because I've been training people on that for a decade now. So I have a lot of these ideas, and I didn't take the time to organize them into a framework. I really like creating my own frameworks, but that takes a lot of time and a lot of research and a lot of thinking. So straight away, I cut off probably years and years and years of time. And then I set myself some really strict constraints. So the first constraint was the book would be no more than 10,000 words. And the reason I set 10,000 words was because when I was at university, I remember in the last year, everyone has to write a dissertation. And the dissertation is 10,000 words. And I remember most of my classmates, you have a year to write this dissertation. Most of my classmates procrastinated and waited until the last 24 hours. So I thought, if a bunch of lazy students can write 10,000 words in 24 hours, then I'm sure I can.
Yeah.
So that was my goal. And then I broke it down. I said each chapter will be no more than 700 words. And I had a tool that as I was typing, it would have like a bar telling me how much progress I've got. And oh, cool, 700 words. Oh, I'll do another one. I'll take a break at this time. And I was doing a few other things like yoga throughout the day to stretch myself out. Yeah, and making sure I ate right and so on. And I hired a graphic designer to design the cover. And so in the morning, as I was writing, he designed some mock-ups. And then as I took a break, I'd post the mock-ups on LinkedIn. I'd get people to vote. And as they were voting, I'd go back to writing. I'd check again. Okay, I like this one. Here's some suggestions. And so, and also I finished in the evening, about 6 o'clock. I finished writing everything. Then I sent it off to an editor. And so the editor was working overnight. And so in the morning, I woke up a bit early. I went through their edits. I changed the final things. And then I uploaded to Amazon. And it was I was really, really proud of that book, and still am, actually. And that was a massive, massive confidence booster. Because I can write a book in 24 hours. I don't think many people have written books in 24 hours.
Definitely not.
It gave me a huge amount of confidence and taught me that a book can come in many formats. My first book was 100,000 words long and took 6 years to write. My second one was 10,000 words long and is much, much thinner. And actually, interestingly enough, I sold a lot more copies of that second book because people prefer shorter books, which is not surprising.
Not surprising.
That was a really, really big confidence booster. And I might do something like that again in the coming months as well. It was really fun to do.
This is so amazing. I never knew about this story. And I'm so happy to listen to it. I'm like, this the whole time. It sounds like I'm listening to a movie script, It can easily become a movie, like how to write a book in less than 24 hours. And then it's only one guy in one room doing everything on the computer and sending here and there. The book cover is coming, the editor is working, it's like I would watch that movie for sure. I think it's a
probably wouldn't be an interesting movie. It would just be me go for about 2 hours.
But still, this is why it's interesting. People would be waiting, what's going to happen now? Is somebody going to kill him? So many things can happen, but actually you just write in a book. But it's so, I can totally understand why you mentioned this is such a good confidence booster, because come on, who has done this before? It's really an interesting thing. And I will ask you for the link to that book later, so I can also put it in the description and also check it out myself. I'm sure it's also very interesting to go through it and also learn from it, even though it's only 10,000 words, but just only. Wow, that's so awesome.